In a Rose Garden ceremony at the White House Tuesday, President Joe Biden signed into law the first federal legislation to make lynching a hate crime, addressing a history of racist killings in the United States.
They're crimes, trying to vote, trying to go to school, trying to own a business or preach the gospel. False accusations of murder, arson, and robbery. Simply being black.
The law is named for Emmett Till, a 14-year-old black boy who was brutally murdered in Mississippi in 1955. The bill makes it possible to prosecute any conspiracy to commit a hate crime that results in death or serious bodily injury as a lynching. Till's death and an all-white jury's dismissal of charges against two white men who later confessed to his killing drew national attention to the atrocities and violence that black Americans face and became a civil rights rallying cry. Vice President Kamala Harris, the country's first black and Asian American vice president, co-sponsored the bill while serving as a U.S. Senator from California.
Lynching is not a relic of the past. Racial acts of terror still occur in our nation. And when they do, we must all have the courage to name them and hold the perpetrators to account.
In August, the FBI said the number of hate crimes in the United States had risen the previous year to the highest level in more than a decade, driven by a rise in assaults against black and Asian victims. The bill passed the Senate by unanimous consent and the House of Representatives by a vote of 422 to 3.
Russian hotel owner Mikhail Golubtsov says it was partly shame that prompted him to turn his cozy country inn, nestled in the hills of central Serbia, into a refuge for Ukrainians fleeing Russia's invasion.
At first, I was in shock and I was so ashamed. For some time, I could not speak Russian. But when guests arrived and they spoke Russian to me, I spoke Russian as well. I think the only thing I can do now is to help Ukrainians somehow.
Many Ukrainian families have been torn apart, with most men aged 18 to 60 banned from leaving Ukraine as they may be called to fight in a war that since its start 1 month ago has killed thousands of civilians. Ukrainian English teacher and mother of 3, Olga Manmar, is one of the so far 34 refugees who have found a safe haven at the hotel, having entered Serbia via Romania.
And I don't know how this magic works. You cross the border, it's the same planet, but crossing the border you feel safe. And it's mad feeling, it's the same, same air, same ground. You look around, but you cross the border and you feel safe. But you feel so sorry about those who haven't crossed the border. That was very painful. The men cannot, cross the border, so they would drive, and then,
Manmar traveled with her friend Anna Nitsogorodova, a Russian married to a Ukrainian who had been living in Kiev for the past 15 years. Nitsogorodova, whose 2 children are also with her, said she felt nothing when she arrived.
In your mind, you understand that everything around you is very beautiful and very quiet, but you do not feel beauty, nothing. You simply want to cover yourself with a blanket for some time. I think we have all felt that because my children, it was like that. They lay down, wrapped themselves in blankets, looked at their phones, and did not want to go anywhere.
The United Nations says 3.8 million Ukrainians have fled since the war began, most of them to Poland and Romania. Only around 2,500 have come to Serbia so far, mostly as a stopover on their journey to Western Europe. Hotel owner Golubtsov, who left Russia in 2014 over what he called Moscow's unacceptable annexation of Crimea, says Ukrainian refugees can stay at his serene spot for as long as they need, free of charge.
U.S. stocks rose on Tuesday, with the Dow and S&P notching their 4th straight session of gains on optimism that progress was being made toward a deal to ease the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. The Dow finished up about 1%, and the S&P 500 closed up more than 1%, while the Nasdaq ended almost 2% higher. Still, there were signs of market nervousness as the widely tracked U.S. 2-year and 10-year Treasury yield curve inverted for the first time since September of 2019, a key metric that has served as a warning sign for investors that a recession could be on the horizon. Brian Vendig, president of MJP Wealth Advisors, said the next couple of weeks will offer clues for where the stock market might head.
Two main elements that we should look for is, number one, how does the interest rates change on the yield curve relative to what's going on with geopolitical events and what's going on with economic data that's going to be released regarding the growth of the global economy. And I think that's going to tee up investors' perspectives right ahead of us going into corporate earnings in the month of April, which is going to be a great validation to see, can companies continue to expand while we're concerned about changes in interest rates and inflation and policies around the world.
The S&P's real estate sector led the stock market gainers on Tuesday, rising nearly 3% on the session. U.S. home builder stocks also rose as home prices climbed further. And shares of Uber Technologies jumped about 7% on a report the ride-hailing giant was close to a deal with a San Francisco taxi outfit, less than a week after striking a similar deal in New York City.